Greetings. My name is Benjamin Symington, and I'm currently a master's student in the Department of Asian Studies at the University of Texas at Austin. And today I'm going to talk to you all about my fellowship experiences. So, for myself, I did two different national fellowships. I was a recipient of the 2014 Critical Language Scholarship for Hindi. So, I went to Jaipur, India in 2014. And I was also a recipient of the Nehru U.S. Fulbright Student Research Fellowship for academic year 2015 through 2016 in India. And as far as why I chose those programs, I was in college, so I received guidance about an opportunity called Religion, Society, and Modern India, and this was an opportunity that was a short-term study abroad. I had a mentor named Jim Lochtefeld, and he allowed Carthage students to go on this trip. And prior to that trip, I had been in a course called, Modern India, History of Modern India, and that was a really powerful course because I was able to learn more about the different cultural groups in India, the religious groups, and a lot more about the Indian nationalist movement, and sort of resisting sort of British India and British colonization. So learning more about figures like Gandhi, B.R. Ambedkar, Maulana Azad, and all these different kinds of figures. So it's really intriguing. That short-term study abroad was really, really powerful experience. We were in India for 3 weeks in northern India. So we went to Delhi, Haridwar, Amritsar, and Ajmer Sharif. And being in these different cities, these are hubs of Hinduism, of Sikhism, of Islam. So seeing these different religions up close and personal, interacting with the faithful, trying different foods and experiencing the music and the sort of liveliness and all of the fascinating things about modern Indian culture and modern Indian society. It was really, really powerful. And after that experience, I knew that I really wanted to study Hindi. And after spending a summer studying Hindi at the University of Wisconsin at Madison in 2013, led to me applying to CLS. And after CLS and being there, I really enjoyed that. I wanted to build and do research on the Kabir Punt and Kabir. And this was a really important community that followed the Indian poet Saint Kabir. So I was able to learn more about them and focus on them in the course of my research during my Fulbright year. As far as the people who helped me in the application process, so I had a fellowship office at my college, and I shared my essays with the fellowship office at Carthage College, and I also shared it with professors that I was close to, and they were kind enough to review my essays and give me feedback. And like most colleges, our college had a Fulbright committee and a Fulbright advisor who was a campus advisor. So the Fulbright committee and the Fulbright campus advisor were instrumental in providing me feedback and guidance on my Fulbright application as well. So that was a really, really positive thing. As far as tips I have for someone who's thinking about applying but isn't sure, I first encourage people to reflect, to think about ultimately what things are important to you. What are you passionate about? What kinds of experiences do you want to have in life? And I would encourage them to, journal, to look into different countries, to look into different opportunities, and really to reflect and think, is this the kind of thing that you want to do? And all these sorts of things. And, I'd encourage, people to reflect and to journal. And that's a good thing to think about when it comes to applying. I also encourage looking at the various websites in terms of fellowship websites and reading the FAQs and these things, because FAQs are really helpful in terms of those frequently asked questions. As far as my in-country experience goes, I had an overall very positive experience. I really love, studying India and Indian culture. There's a saying in Hindi, particularly in Hinduism, that Atiti Devo Bhava, the guest is God or guest is like God. So because of that, there's this really big emphasis on treating guests well. In a similar sense, in Urdu, there's a phrase, Mehman Nawazi, a Mehman Nawazi. Mehman Nawazi means basically hospitality, and there's a big emphasis on Mehman Nawazi in the sort of Urdu, Persianate culture of South Asia, and this big emphasis on adab, so showing lot of comportment and kindness and respect towards guests. So I was, really into my experience in India. A lot of people showed me adab, showed me this kind of kindness and hospitality. Speaking Hindi and studying Hindi, people are very encouraging with that. Even as a foreigner making mistakes, people, were very positive. And I love just traveling all over the country, doing interviews in terms of my Fulbright experience, reading different kinds of literature and newspapers and things during my critical language scholarship experience, and trying all the different foods. And I love chaat. So for those who know Indian food and cuisine, chaat is like a kind of snack food that you have on the street, made up of different vegetables and fried foods and spices and things. So I love the chaat, as well as some of the different vegetarian and non-vegetarian options. So that was really positive. One thing that was a bit challenging at times as an African American, I was an object of curiosity at times because of my face, in terms of my complexion and things of that nature. So because of that, I, it was an object of curiosity at times. So people might point at me occasionally, or say Africa or Jamaica. And sometimes people would doubt that I was from America in conversation. So I'd be explaining I was born in America, and they'd say, no, but were you really born? Was your father born? Your mother born? So these kinds of elements of difference were challenging at times. But overall, I had a positive experience. I made a lot of friends and people who really showed me a lot of love and supported me. As far as, why apply for international exchange, I would say that international exchange is really revelatory for me. It gives a person insight into your own self, your own positionality in terms of your connection to the United States, or wherever you were born and grew up. I'd say for myself, just going through the process is a very gradual process, but it forces you to reflect and to think about, again, your values in terms of what's important to you, in terms of your aspirations and things of that nature. And I'd say I didn't really fully realize how I was an American or a U.S. American until I went abroad, because sort of cultural things that are ingrained in us here in the United States, we take some of those things for granted, and sometimes we might assume that everyone thinks this way, or we may say, oh, not everyone thinks this way, but we don't realize the extent of our biases. And the same goes for any place. We're all shaped by our country and our context. So I'd say it's really helpful to not see U.S. as universal, but to see U.S. and U.S. culture as one manifestation or form of culture. And you're also able to learn about things with yourself. So for instance, I learned about the African diaspora in India and in Pakistan and Sri Lanka. They're called Siddhis in India, or Shidis in Pakistan. But they're people who have been in India over 700, 800 years, who came through slavery, through merchants, through trade and soldiers. And there's all kinds of, monumental names like Malik Ambar and others, and Aurangzeb, who was a leader and a sovereign who was of Ethiopian heritage. So just these kinds of things were very fascinating for me, and how I understood my own African American identity, as well as connections between African Americans and India with people like MLK and Gandhi and Bayard Rustin and Gandhi and nonviolence. So these are a few examples of that. As far as do's and don'ts, I would encourage people to not wait till the last minute to take your time and work diligently on the project. I'd say to not wait till the last minute to ask for letters of recommendation. I'd encourage people to proofread and to read things out loud. And there's a really great ebook related to personal fellowships, and it's by Joe Schall, Schall, and it's published through Penn State. And that ebook has a lot of great resources related to international exchange. I would say that one of my really favorite experiences in India was going to the Jama Masjid in New Delhi. It's a beautiful mosque, one of the biggest in India. And there they have a hair of the Holy Prophet, Muhammad, peace be upon him, as well as lots of other really fascinating artifacts and things of that nature. So that's a really great experience. And I just say, in terms of life, you always want to do your best. And even if you make mistakes or you don't receive the application, it's a learning process, and you can learn about yourselves. So thank you all for listening, and all the best with fellowship process. Thank you.